The crowd gathered around the grand piano in the middle of the busy mall, laughing as a ragged little girl approached. Her shoes were torn, her hair tangled, and a cardboard sign hung from her neck. "Can I play for food?" The security guard smirked, ready to send her away. People whispered, pulling out their phones to record what they thought would be a funny moment. But when her tiny fingers touched the keys, the laughter began to fade. Each note she played told a story of hunger, heartbreak, and hope. And within seconds, the noise of the mall fell into silence. Her name was Lena. Just 12 years old, she had been living on the streets for nearly half a year. Once, she had a warm bed, a loving mother, and a piano that sat by the window of their small apartment. But when her mother got sick and the medical bills piled up, life began to crumble piece by piece. The piano was sold first, then the apartment. Then, one winter night, Lena lost her mother too. Now Lena wandered the city with a small backpack and a single dream: to play again. Every time she passed a music store, she'd press her ear against the glass, listening to muffled melodies drifting from behind the door. She could almost feel the keys under her fingers again. Almost. That afternoon, she followed the sound of a piano echoing through the mall. It was part of a charity event, an open stage for registered performers to play and raise donations. The sign beside it read, "Registered performers only." Lena's stomach growled as she watched the well-dressed musicians finish their pieces, collecting tips and applause. She hesitated, clutching a piece of cardboard with shaky handwriting. "Can I play for food?" Slowly, she walked toward the piano. The crowd turned. A few laughed. Someone muttered, "Where's her parent?" Another whispered, "She's just trying to get attention." The security guard took a step forward, but before he could stop her, Lena sat down on the bench. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from hunger and longing. She had nothing left to lose. A hush fell as she pressed the first key. The sound was soft, almost uncertain. Then another note, and another. Within moments, the melody began to unfold, delicate, haunting, filled with the kind of emotion only suffering can teach. The crowd slowly quieted. Even those who had laughed found themselves staring, their smirks melting away. The music built like a storm. Each chord spoke of cold nights under bridges, of the sound of rain hitting cardboard roofs, of her mother's fading lullabies. It was raw and honest, too pure for anyone to ignore. The laughter turned into awe. The mall's usual noise was gone, replaced by the story of a child who had lost everything yet still found beauty in her pain. When the final note lingered in the air, no one moved. Then, one by one, hands began to clap. The applause grew louder until the entire mall was cheering. Some people cried. Others placed food, money, and gifts beside her sign. A woman in a neat blazer, Mrs. Green, the event organizer, stepped forward. She had been watching the whole time, at first annoyed by the interruption, but now her eyes were soft. "Who taught you to play like that?" she asked quietly. Lena looked up and whispered, "My mom." The woman smiled faintly. She must be very proud. That night, Lena walked back to the bridge where she slept, her stomach finally full. For the first time in months, she didn't feel invisible. By morning, someone had uploaded her performance online. The video spread across social media, titled, "Homeless Girl Stuns Everyone with Piano Skills." Within hours, it had millions of views. News stations picked it up and people across the world wanted to know who the little girl was. But fame didn't fill Lena's stomach. That night, she still slept under the same bridge, hugging her backpack for warmth. Yet something inside her felt different, like a spark had been lit. The next day, Mrs. Green found her again. She wasn't alone this time. With her stood a man in a long coat holding a briefcase. "Lena," Mrs. Green said gently, "this is Mr. Carter. He's from the city conservatory." Lena blinked in disbelief. Mr. Carter knelt beside her and smiled. "We saw your video," he said. "You're not just talented, you're remarkable. We want you to audition for us." Her eyes widened. But I don't have nice clothes. I don't even have a home. Mr. Carter nodded. You have music. That's enough. 2 days later, Lena entered the grand hall of the city conservatory. The chandeliers sparkled above her. The polished floor gleamed. She wore borrowed clothes, a simple dress and shoes too big for her small feet. A grand piano sat at the center of the stage under a bright spotlight. Whispers rippled through the judge's panel. A homeless child, one said softly. Is this a joke? Lena took a deep breath. Her hands shook as she placed them on the keys. She closed her eyes and remembered her mother's words. Play like you're telling the world who you are. She began to play. The sound filled the hall like a living heartbeat. Strong, painful, beautiful. She poured her memories into every note. The nights she went hungry, the sound of her mother's cough, the laughter of strangers who didn't understand. Her music spoke of struggle, but also of survival. The judges stopped whispering. Their pens lay forgotten. All that existed was the music. When the final chord rang out, the silence was deafening. Then one judge stood and began to clap. Another joined, and another, until the entire hall was on its feet. Some wiped tears from their eyes. Lena sat there, stunned. She had done it again, turned doubt into belief, pity into admiration. That day changed everything. The conservatory awarded her a full scholarship, tuition, housing, food, and all. News outlets across the country shared her story. She became a symbol of hope, a reminder that talent knows no privilege and that greatness can rise from anywhere. But even as the world celebrated her, Lena never forgot the bridge, the hunger, or the faces of those who still lived there. Every evening after practice, she'd walk back to that same place with sandwiches in her hands. Sometimes, she carried a small keyboard, playing softly under the same stars that once witnessed her tears. Her music wasn't just for fame, it was for those who had been forgotten. Years passed, and Lena's name began appearing in concert programs and TV interviews. Her performances were more than entertainment. They were stories told through sound. Each melody carried her past within it. Her pain transformed into something beautiful. At her first major recital, the Grand Theater overflowed. The audience buzzed with anticipation. Among them sat Mrs. Green and Mr. Carter, tears in their eyes, watching the little girl they once met on the street walk onto a stage that now bore her name. Lena took her seat, dressed simply in white. She placed her hands on the piano and whispered, "For you, Mom." The first notes floated into the air, gentle, heartfelt, alive. The melody told her entire story without a single word. It spoke to every child who had been laughed at, every dreamer who had been told they weren't enough. It reminded the world that even the smallest light can shine through the darkest night. When the last note faded, the hall erupted in applause. People stood, cheering, crying, clapping until their hands hurt. But Lena didn't cry. She only smiled, a quiet, peaceful smile, because she knew her mother would have been proud. And as she looked out into the crowd, she thought, sometimes the world laughs at you before it learns your name. The little girl who once played for food now played for hearts. And no one would ever laugh at her again.